Ugh. So what I'm noticing is that so I have pretty bad allergies. I take 2 shots a week for allergies. And what I've noticed is my breathing has been
Okay, Becky, we have to go ahead.
great. Good evening. Welcome to our April Finance Committee meeting, our April 13th Finance Committee meeting. In accordance with an act to implement provisions necessary to the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of Maine in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency as enacted to read Section D11 MRSA, Section 403A, public proceedings through remote access during the declaration of emergency to COVID-19 and for 30 days following the termination of that state of emergency. The Finance Committee meeting will be held through Google Meet. The meeting will be live streamed and available for viewing at www.msad11.org. We will now do the call to order. Pat, would you call the roll?
Yes, Becky Fless,
Yay.
Nicole Medor,
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy. She has not joined us, but she will. Jim Lothridge is not with us. Patrick Saucier,
Yay.
Cullen McGuff.
Yay.
Okay, Becky.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the discussion of the 2021-2022 budget.
Sure. So want to give you an update on where things stand. The last time that we met, the increase to the budget was a bit over $1 million. We were looking at a percent increase of, like, it was around 4.5%. At that time, we had hoped that our health insurance was going to come in around 0%. Unfortunately, that did not happen. The MEA or the MBTA, they decided this year that they were going to do the calculations a bit differently than they had in years past. And so as a result of the calculation being done differently, we saw a 4% increase. Now, we had budgeted 3% because our experience rating was so low. And so as a consequence of it, we had to add back in, I believe it was $34,000, correct, Andrea? So we had to add $34,000 in. We also, I mentioned last time that we were expecting to see some additional federal dollars through our local entitlement, which is our federal funds for special education. We were told that we should receive a roughly a 20% increase. Well, we don't have those numbers. We are expecting that we will see an increase as they're promising us. So we have removed approximately $100,000 from special education for out-of-district placements. Those would have been additions to the budget. The other area and information I'd shared with you at the last meeting, that we had some other possible transfers that we could take out of the budget and transfer to ESSER money, totaling roughly $280,000. We did that. So all of that money has been taken out, and we are pretty confident that the ESSER funds will be approved And so we will be able to fund those programs using that federal money. As a reminder, a lot of that had to do with software licenses for like Edpuzzle, Padlet, Seesaw, those types of things. We also had some ESY, extended school year. We had money in there for about $35,000. Curriculum, we had around $130,000 that we had built in for our social studies curriculum and for ELA trade books and for ELA curriculum K through 8. So we've shifted that out, plus a few items that we've shifted out for operations and maintenance. As a result of those shifts, and I asked Andrea to once again go through the budget with a very fine-tooth comb. Is there anything else, any other place that we can take some money out to lower that budget? And she did what she could, but she released to you this afternoon. Hopefully you had an opportunity to look at it. She released to you the most current proposed budget. And we're down from over $1 million increase to an increase of 2.54%, which is $663,751.77. What that means for taxpayers is an increase of $633,913.10, which is a 6.36% across the board. Andrea, would you like to speak to any of the changes that I've just mentioned?
No, I think you've hit everything right on the head. The only other project that we moved out was the siding project at Helen Thompson, which was in Gabe's budget this year. Looking at our budget as we're approaching the end of the year, I think we'll have sufficient carryover, sufficient monies to pay that, plus attain the carryover that we need for subsequent years. It may require a board vote to shift from one expenditure article to another. I won't know as we get closer to the end of the school year, but I do think that we're able to do the siding project out of this year's budget. So that has been moved.
Okay. If you look at the expenditure articles, so the other sheet, you'll be able to see how this 2.54% increase is spread throughout the warrant articles. And as you can see, we are at, the largest one is at special education at 6.96%. And I think we've talked to you, or Alicia was here and she shared some of the challenges with special services and the out of district placement needs that we have. That warrants that increase. At one point, if you'll recall, that was $1 million increase, and we have it down to 282,000. So I feel like we tried to be really creative in finding a way of lowering that and finding other monies. The next highest one is school administration at 5.24, and that is just salary increases and health insurance. There's really no new purchases. Beyond that, we have a lot of items like facilities. We're only looking at a less than 1% increase, despite health insurance and salary increases. So, and regular instruction, we're under 3% there as well. So I don't know if you have questions about this particular document regarding how we actually got to these percentages or not, beyond what we've already discussed. I would, I guess, defer right now to Andrea. I know, Cullen, you had asked a question the last time we met about our budgeting process. And Andrea would like to take another stab at responding to that question. So Andrea, would you like to kind of take the lead?
So in retrospect, I didn't like the way that I answered it. I didn't think it was very informative. So I'm going to try to address it much better. I sometimes forget that we have new board members, and every so often that we start all over and it's a whole new a whole new training or instruction. So the way that we start our budget, Colin, is basically 0% every year. We start from the ground up. So the biggest part of our budget, I know when we had a conversation last time, we talked about what was our budget made of. Well, I went back and I calculated this year's or next year's budget moving forward, and 79.5% is staff and salaries. So what I do is I take our existing staff that is on payroll and I move them into the new budget, and I make adjustments to, so if you're a teacher and you're on step 6, the next year you're supposed to be on step 7, we move you to step 7. All of these adjustments are made to individuals, including any deductions, employer deductions that we know are going to increase. So workers' comp is increasing next year, unemployment. So if you look at, I know that you see a one-page expenditure document, but if I printed you our budget, there would be 638 pages of summary. So if you looked at the instructional salary line at LER, for example, and you asked me to drill in, I could tell you every single individual who makes up that line, what step they are on, and how much they're going to get paid. And it's like that for every single one of our salary accounts. The only exception to that would be our substitutes. And obviously, I don't know who's going to substitute. There is a block amount for subs, but every other salary is a person in a position that they are supposed to get based on the collective bargaining agreement that we have in place. The other unknown, and you've heard us talk about it, is health insurance. So we take a stab at a percentage, and then we change as we get closer, as we get more information from. So that is 80% of our budget. Looking at our budget, 1.9 million of that is facilities, not including their salaries and benefits. So every year, Gabe starts his budget at 0, and he starts putting in requisitions that he needs, and that gets dumped in our budget. And the same goes for all of our administrators. They start asking for supplies at their level, as well as technology and special education. So it's not incremental budgeting. We're not asking for a percentage over last year. We're actually building it every year from the ground up based on the staff that we have. There are no new positions in this year's budget. I will say, however, there are 2 unfilled positions. One, the BCBA position, which is currently in this year's budget, that we were unable to fill. And there's a literacy, there's a coach, an instructional coach rather, that the decision was made during COVID not to fill. It was just Angela and Pat decided that it would probably not be a great time to bring somebody new on, as we were all in remote. So those are the only positions that are not tied to specific people, because we haven't advertised them, and they're not new because they're carried in this year's budget. All of our new positions that you hear Pat talk about are going to be in our federal grants, our Easter grants. That is where all of our new staff is residing. So I just wanted you to have a better idea of how we budgeted, and not just, I guess I felt like I blew off your question, and I just wanted to give you a better understanding. After I got back from that meeting, I sent some additional budget out, much larger summary document. And if you have questions, or if any of you have questions about any specific line in that budget, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to tell you what makes up that line, so that you are comfortable with the budget. But I wanted you to see, I think the summary version that I gave you was about 250 pages, but you're welcome to go through it. And if there's, like I said, if there's something that catches your eye and you're wondering what it is, I would rather have you you reach out and ask me, so that I can explain exactly what is made up of that specific number. Does that help? Oops, sorry.
I would say, can I make one correction, Andrea? There
Sure.
is a new position in this budget. It's a half-time
Oh,
assistant principal
sorry.
at the Helen Thompson School. So I just don't want to mislead anyone. There is a
Sorry.
half-time position in there that is new.
Forgot about that one.
Cullen,
Andrea, I just want to say thank you very much because I appreciate the extra effort you put in there and the time you've taken to help add a little light to it. I also wanted to say I would never ask you for the 600-page full budget report, partly because I'm not going to read it, but also because I very much respect your professionalism, and that's your job to handle. What I was really just curious about is having joined the team in the middle of a pandemic year. There's nothing to look at to know what the baseline is, what the trend looks like, because I think that's more appropriate for a board member to say, oh gosh, for the last 5 years, we're going up 10% a year in this category. Maybe we should consider that. But I thank you. I really appreciate the extra work you put in.
so Andrea, the future agenda items, will you add to your agenda for our next meeting to provide the finance committee with your 20-year projection sheet or retro, right?
knew
You look
exactly.
back at how that money has been spent over the last few years. We usually produce that document once the final budget has been approved. So I think now is a great time to make sure you put that in the hands of the finance committee. Great, thank you, Andrea. The other thing that I've asked Andrea to do in terms of this budget is to reach out to the town offices in the 4 communities and find out at this point what the increase to taxpayers, what that looks like per household. So that takes a little while for her to gather that information, but she is in the process of doing that. I mean, keep in mind, I know this is a large number. It's certainly much larger than I had wanted. If our insurance had come in lower, we would be looking at $130,000 less than what is currently in here, which was my target. My target was $500,000, and the insurance really, unfortunately, prevented that from happening. But as we look at these increases, I think it's really important to also keep in mind that the state valuation increased at $10 million in every single community. So while this is a lot of money, we're not really sure how that will play out and what that will look like per individual home for each taxpayer. So we will bring that and have that ready for the next finance committee meeting as well. So this is all we have, folks, for the budget. I don't know where else to go to bring this number any lower. The only other options to bring it lower is to eliminate the new half-time assistant principal position, which I don't support. I feel like that is desperately needed at the Helen Thompson School. And the only other options beyond that is to really look at positions. So I don't know what your thoughts are.
Board members?
I know if you don't mind me throwing something out there, I'd rather make sure we have the money to fund the positions instead of cutting positions. So that's just my viewpoint.
Thank you, Patrick. I think especially now, if we have any hope of going back full time in the fall, we're gonna have a need for more for the staff that we have. We will need that. And then as we look at the social emotional needs that we could be looking at as well, I guess I don't think this is a time for cutting positions.
Well, and that's the thing too, is, there's enough stresses in our lives with having to worry about, a board saying we're going to cut positions and stuff like that. That's the last thing I want our staff to think or worry about, is that we're looking to save a couple bucks and we're going to lack of a better way of putting it, sacrifice their position to do it. So
Yeah.
my stance is I'll fight against any position cuts. So
Well, and I will say that the conversation Andrea and I had is, the possibility of taking a position out of the local budget, putting it in the federal budget, right, and having it funded by federal dollars. But by doing that in 2 years, we're going to have to add it back into the local budget. And so I think what that practice could result in is just a greater increase to taxpayers 2 years out, right? We're just kicking the can and potentially only making it worse. So I am not making that as a proposal.
Matthew?
Matt?
Just out of curiosity, because I haven't seen it, is the 50K that we put in the, I'm assuming it's like the maintenance budget that we talked about last year. I think we voted on as a board last year that we were going to fund 50K in the facilities pot of money. Is that something that we're funding this year?
Honestly, oops, sorry, Pat.
No, go ahead.
Honestly, Matthew, it depends how much we have left at the end of the year. My hopes are first to be able to move some of Gabe's projects to this year. And then my second hope was to pay off our turf field lease purchase so that we didn't have that hanging over our heads. I hate long year commitments, and we already have one long-term commitment with the capital improvement project that we did with Siemens from a few years ago. So if we're able, I would like to pay off the turf field. And then my second concern, or my third concern after that, obviously, is making sure that we have enough carryover for a subsequent year after. What I would hate to do is have less carry forward for a future year and then having to find a way to make that up in another year. If once I'm able to attain all of that, if there's money left, we can certainly talk about putting additional money in either the capital improvement or the special education fund that we created. Right now, that special education fund has $300,000. I mean, we certainly could talk about removing, and Pat and I haven't discussed this, another out of district placement out of this year's budget and using the special ed fund that we've created in the event that we need to send a child. That's a consideration, but I'd like to keep that healthy, not knowing how many students move in. I can't tell you how many times my phone rings during the year, and it's Alicia and or Sarah telling me that we have a student who's moved in that we think we're going to need to place at one of these special purpose private schools, and those range between 50 and 100,000 a year, excluding transportation. So, I just want to make sure that we have the funds available to do that if need be. Sorry, Pat.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Colin? Oh, Matt, did you have something else?
Please.
No, I'm good.
Okay, Colin?
I was just noticing, if we went back in time just a couple of years, in 2018, the national inflation rate was about 2.4%. So, with that kind of perspective, if this was a budget in that year, then it really was like a break-even process. So I think the fact that you've whittled it down to a 2.6% increase in the middle of the pandemic is actually quite remarkable. So pat on the back for that one. Looking forward, though, I think something interesting to consider is this sort of the new floor of services and staffing that we're looking at? Or is there anything in this particular year that might decrease going forward if pandemic requirements ease a bit? Because just in terms of sort of getting the towns on board, if they know that we got to dig a little deeper this year to get through, I think there's going to be a lot of support and respect for that. If we're going to have to ramp up at the same rate perpetually, then people want to know that too. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, I'm, at this point, I'm not ready to forecast what the future will hold. We are currently doing some work with an organization called the District Management Group. They're a consulting firm. They came in and did an assessment, kind of like an audit of how we're providing services to some of our students, our struggling students. And so we are really in the process of doing a comprehensive analysis of the services that we provide, how we provide the services, and who we're providing the services, whether they're ed techs, whether they're certified teachers, et cetera. And so we've begun making some shifts in which we're not rehiring or not filling some ed tech positions as they become vacant. And instead, we're shifting them to more certified staff members who are better trained to support teachers. So we are making those types of internal changes. The other thing that we're doing, and we'll talk a little bit more about ESER when we get to the ESER money, and we've talked about it in the past, is we do have a significant number of new positions that we are planning to fund, hoping to fund over the next 2 years. And the intent is that it's 2 years only, as long as the federal funds become available. And then those positions will be eliminated. But while I say that, again, it's hard to know what 2 years out will look like. We may find through that process that we want to keep a certain position and do away with a current practice, right? Something that we already have in place, and kind of make that shift. So we'll have to see how that all plays out over time.
Thanks, Pat. One more question for you. You had mentioned previously that you're often in close contact with other superintendents. How is this budget stacking up against our sister neighbor communities?
We don't always talk about that specifically, so I'm not sure of their increases, but I have looked I've seen in the newspaper for other area school districts, and I think a lot of them really are hitting around 3-4% increase, 2.5, 3, 4. So I think we're in the ballpark of where other schools are coming in as well. Thanks.
Pat, can I add on?
Sure.
Another thing that I think that we don't mention enough is our per pupil expenditures as they compare to other school districts throughout the state. I know we may have mentioned it in an earlier budget year, but the state of Maine ranks all school districts based on their expenditures in previous budget years. And what I will say is that we are always very close to the bottom. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or if it's a bad thing. We're definitely thrifty, that's for sure. And we seem to consistently be there. So like Pat said, I'm not quite sure how we compare to the surrounding school districts, but I know where we compare to the school districts in the remainder of the state. So,
and that information is reported out in our brochure that is distributed to all families. We communicate exactly what that looks like. I want to say most recently I was on the Department of Education webpage, and I was looking at some of the statistics, and I believe I saw that the state average is 13,000 something per pupil, and we were 11,000 something in what we spend per pupil. So considerably less than the state. So that's just an example of what Andrea was referring to. So Finance Committee members, I guess my question would be, would you endorse, can you endorse this budget and take it forward to the school board for approval?
I can endorse it, and I will happily say that. I think you guys have, I think the staff always does, Pat and the administrative team always does a wonderful job at trying to best represent our needs without being we're not extravagant. I hate the word thrifty, but we are. So I think that we have a lot of need, and need costs money. So I support it personally. I would ask other board members if you do or if you don't, whatever you need to say.
Andrea, would you like a motion? Do you think? Are we ready for a motion?
We can do a motion.
And if you're not, that's okay. But yeah, it'd be ideally if you are on board, then we would love to have a motion so that we could kind of shift our attention to other items.
So is anyone comfortable making a motion?
No, I can make the motion if you'd like. Make motion that we, how would you want to word this?
How
Approve
about
presentation
support the budget as presented?
with full board approval.
Or that you recommend to the board that the finance committee supports the budget as presented?
Okay, if somebody wants to just copy what she said, that'd be great.
Okay. And is there a second out there anywhere?
I'll second Patrick's motion.
Thank you, Nicole. All right. Pat, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Becky Fless,
Yay.
Nicole Madore,
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy, I don't think she's here yet. Patrick Saucier
Yay.
and Cullen McGuff.
Yay.
Okay. Now, Tony is here, Matt is here. You guys are not on the board to officially vote, but generally, are you guys in support?
So this is Tony. Yes, I am. Thank you for your discussion and great concepts. You answered all my questions as I was listening, and I appreciate the time.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, this is
Matt?
Matt. I'm good with it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, board members.
Great.
Next on the agenda is the ESSER update.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a brief update on our grant situation. So first of all, on ESSER, remember there's ESSER 1 and there's ESSER 2 and there's ESSER 3. So with the ESSER grant, I submitted that application a couple weeks ago. That is the grant in which we have $1.6 million available to us, and we need to spend that over 2 years. And that was approved without question. I didn't need to make any changes at all. I'm really excited about that. And so what was included is the 4-classroom modular unit over at Helen Thompson. With that is a classroom teacher to help reduce class sizes, especially at the upper levels. We also had approved over at Pittston Randolph, 2-classroom modular unit. And with that, and I see Alyssa has joined us. Hi, Alyssa. And so we also have a classroom teacher that goes along with that particular one. Again, we have grade 5 classrooms, projected class sizes at around 26. So we really need to have that extra teacher in that extra classroom. They approved a nurse for another year at LER. At the high school, a math teacher, a special ed teacher, at the middle school, a social studies teacher, and then at the district level, some ELA trade books. And so all of that combined equals the $1.6 million. So we're really excited that that was approved. The ESSER 3 money has not, the application has not yet been released. The Department of Education is still waiting for some of the guidelines to come down from the feds. So we don't know all of the details as of yet. I think I mentioned the last time that we met, one thing that we've learned is that 20% of the ESSER 3 money must be spent on evidence-based interventions. And so we feel like we'll be able to do that pretty easily with our plan. There's also a question about the fact that some of the money is going to have to be spent I don't have the terminology in front of me. I don't remember what it's called, but it needs to be somehow equally dispersed throughout the district. And so I believe that the Department of Education right now is trying to figure out what that means, and how that money can be spent. I believe at our last meeting, I indicated that we were expecting roughly $3.2 million, when in fact, we've now received our allotment, and it is going to be $3,627,000 and change. So we're actually receiving about $427,000 more than what we had anticipated. So how we're looking to spend that money, and I can present this if you want. This is a draft only. Okay, I did this in a way that I can't see you right now. Sorry about that. We're looking at the high school. Again, just a draft. These are ideas and these numbers have not been confirmed. So outdoor classrooms, some window replacements of the tech wing. We have some windows that won't open. We're looking at that special education teacher that I just mentioned in ESSER 2. That's for the first year. This one would cover for the second year. Math teacher, same thing. It would cover the second year. We're looking at a new marquee sign. That's highlighted because it may not stay there. I may actually pull it out and try to fund it through some CRF money, which I'll talk about momentarily. Credit recovery. I really want to beef that up so that we have some support for our students at the high school level. At the middle school, we have a staff bathroom in here right now. Staff have to walk across the building to access only one staff room. I'm sorry, one bathroom that is in the main office. So we're looking at making a modification there. Also an outdoor classroom. Again, another marquee sign. Some after school programming, an instructional coach with some of the work that we're doing with the middle school staff. We want to have an instructional coach. This one most likely would be math. We also have discovered that at the middle school, we do have a bubble coming into the middle school from grade 5 into grade 6. And because of the bubble and the pandemic and the need to make class sizes more manageable so that we can fit students all into the same classroom, we actually need to hire 2 grade 6 social studies teachers for 1 year only. This will bring our class sizes from somewhere around 22, 23 down to, I think, somewhere around 17, 18. Then here's the second year of the social studies teacher that I previously mentioned. We have heating pumps at the Helen Thompson School that are old. We had a plan on having them replaced. I think we were budgeting about $16,500 per year. So here we're just going to try to get them done and get them all updated. We were just talking about a half-time assistant principal. The other half of that position would be an instructional support position. And I have those here at $50,000 for each year. Here is the second half of a classroom teacher for Helen Thompson, the second year. We need windows replaced at LER, same issue. We just don't have, all of them are not operational. And so we need to have them replaced. Over at Pittston, we need to extend parking and have that paved since we're adding teachers. We are seeing an increase as well in our student population. Here, this is grade 2 classroom teacher because of some class sizes, but just so you know, our kindergarten enrollment projection is 40 right now. So with 2 teachers, that would be class sizes of about 20. So there's a good chance this grade 2 is going to shift to kindergarten instead. Grade 5, I already mentioned, class sizes of about 26. So that position is in there. Riverview, we're looking at 80,000 for some window replacement. Classroom teacher, we We have another influx coming in next year, so we just need to make sure that we keep those class sizes low. We've talked about math coaching. Right now we have a math coach and a literacy coach who is responsible for supporting staff and working side by side with them in 4 buildings. So we're really looking at adding 2 more so that each coach only has the responsibility of 2 buildings. With a new curriculum in math that we implemented this year and a new curriculum in ELA next year, we really feel like these coaching positions are absolutely essential to support our staff, which will ultimately support our students, of course. Social worker, so that will give us 2 elementary social workers, another social worker in the middle school, high school, then the curriculum that I've already mentioned for ELA. Technology, we have a server that needs to be upgraded so that Gabe can actually control our HVAC systems from away. We do not have internet or Wi-Fi down at Hope Field. So as our PE classes have to be outside to ensure social distancing, they need to be able to access the internet. So we're looking at trying to do something there. The modular units also need some technology installed, and that's what the 68,000 is for. We have software licenses that need to be renewed. Some of them that we put in last year, that's with the 38,000. We have contact tracing and our lead nurse. We have some elementary scheduling that needs to be done with our DM group. That's about 6,000. Boardroom, do some technology. That amount has to be updated, and I may be able to pay for that out of the CRF. So this may come out. At the last time that we met with the board, with finance, it was suggested that we hire potentially a project manager for Gabe. That is absolutely something we are interested in pursuing. So we're going to work on that. And then special ed. Has to do with some Read 180 training and some extended school year opportunities for students. So that's a really fast overview. I can't tell if there were questions. Sorry, I lost my, I can't see you when I projected. So I hadn't planned on it. So I hadn't set up my screen properly. So I hope I didn't go through that too quickly. But I hope that that was helpful to kind of give you a sense of how we're thinking that we will spend the $3.6 million over the next 2 years. So that's my ESSER update. Questions or comments about that? Patrick.
Just curious, and I know this might have been answered a while back. The positions being created with these monies, is that something that we're going to absorb as a school district in the future, or are these going to be temporary positions with hopeful continuance of the federal money coming in?
They will be temporary positions. We're going to be abundantly clear right up front. They're 2-year positions. Now, individuals who are hired in those positions, you know, we may keep them on if other positions open up. You know, we have retirements or other people move on. So there's the potential that they could eventually move into other positions, but they are temporary positions. We are doing it to help reduce class sizes so that we can better support our students. And by having fewer students in each classroom, we'll better be able to adhere to the safety guidelines that we expect we're still going to have to adhere to next school year. So.
Okay, thanks. I just want to clarify that.
Yep, thank you. Alyssa.
Hi there. Thank you
Hi.
for the presentation, Pat. That was helpful. I'm just curious, is it similar to the first sets of money that we have to submit invoices and get reimbursed? Is that the same process with these?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is why, as we think about the project manager position, we think that there'll be some responsibility to help manage some of the invoicing. Well, they wouldn't work in the business department, you know, in the business office per se. They could actually help organize and collect some of the information that is necessary to make it easier for the business office to send the invoices to to the Department of Education.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're
Pat,
welcome.
Can I add on to that?
Sure.
With the vast amount of money we have, there are rules and regulations regarding federal procurement. So we need to follow bidding guidelines. There is a whole chart, so to speak, or specifications of things that we need to follow. And part of what that position would do is to help Gabe, to ensure that Gabe and I follow all of the federal procurement guidelines. It's a huge piece of this whenever there's federal expenditures.
Yeah, Andrea, I don't envy you, but if I can be of assistance, I've lived in that world. Feel free. I don't mind offering that.
I just may, Alyssa. Thank you for
Yep.
the offer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Alyssa. I have a friend who does this work, and I was going to reach out to her to try to get an idea of how much it usually how much project managers charge per hour, just to try to get a better assessment. So I may pick your brain on that as well. That would be great. Thank you. Other questions? Then the CRF funds, remember those were the CARES Act funds that we received early on. We received those last March. And initially we were told that we had to spend them. Actually, we received them in September. I'm sorry. It wasn't March, it was September. And we were told that we had to expend all of those funds by December 31st. If you remember, we were pretty frantic in trying to pull together projects to be able to spend that money. The feds decided to loosen the deadline, and so we actually now have until June 30 to spend all of that money. So we are now in the process of kind of figuring out how much money we have left in those particular accounts. And so we have determined that between CRF 1 and CRF 2, we have approximately $160,000 left. So I am working with administrators right now to determine how that money is going to be expended. And so we are looking at maybe the marquees that I previously mentioned. We also have some food service issues. Our food service department needs to be able to remotely access files. So there is a software piece that we're looking at purchasing using some of the CRF money. We have a dishwasher that died that they, with us feeding everyone for a period of time, and it's just really overused that. So we're going to try to get that funded. We're looking at technology in the boardroom to try to put cameras in so that it is more similar to what we've become accustomed to versus having Terry sit in the room and pan the board as we talked with a camera. This would be more permanently installed. So those are the things that we're looking at. I need to inform the Department of Education by the end of the day tomorrow as to whether we're going to be able to utilize the entire $160,000 that are left or not. If not, then what we can't use will be reallocated elsewhere to potentially other school districts. So I want to take full advantage and use as much of it as possible. But so there's a lot of work behind the scenes going on with that. So that's all I have for an update, Becky, on ESSER and CRF. Becky, you're muted.
Thank you, Pat. Discussion about the budget meeting and the virtual budget hearing.
Right. So at the last meeting, Andrea forwarded to all of you an email from our attorney outlining what the options are for approval of the budget this year. Andrea and I have had a subsequent conversation about this, and I believe are on the same page, that we believe that we should use the same process as last year, rather than trying to schedule and book a budget hearing in person. There are just so many variables that come with that, and trying to schedule out the gym that we're 6 feet apart. We don't know how many people will actually attend. And so if we fill the gym, I think at that point we'll have 75% capacity. If we fill the gym, then where do we put the rest of the individuals who come, you know, that overflow. So we feel that the easiest thing to do is just to hold a virtual budget hearing like we did last year, give people the opportunity to hear the budget and to ask questions, and then just send the budget to the taxpayers, to the voters in June. Correct, Andrea? So, but I'm not sure how other board members, how all of you, what your thinking is and what you would like to see done.
I'll chime in. I think it makes sense. I don't know that we have many other options. I think you're right, Pat and Andrea. The logistics could get away from us pretty quickly, and we can't anticipate. I don't think we'd have a drove of people, right? But at least having it available like we do now, people can chime in and be able to watch it. I think that makes sense. And it's the least added work for folks that have to coordinate and do all that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Becky, I see that Colin has his hand raised.
Oh, thank you. Colin?
Yeah, I wanted to say I'm in favor of a virtual meeting. I just wanted to say out loud, though, I always have some hesitation that we might be leaving people out of the process who might like to attend the meeting, but maybe don't have the means or the access to a virtual meeting. And, you know, they have as much right to voice an opinion as everybody else. So I don't know if there's a way to support that, because I don't have any great ideas, but I think it's worth mentioning at least.
No, you're singing our tune. That's why we're trying to do the work in the boardroom that we're doing, and I mean, we really want to be visible and transparent, and it's just complicated right now, complicated and expensive. So,
Is there an option like the board meeting where we can offer open comment that they could send in? Is that an option? So we could have questions before or during and then try to do our best to answer them?
Yes.
Okay. That would fulfill
I think
what
we
Colin's
have
saying. I hear that. Yeah.
I think we have to figure out the logistics of it, but
Yeah.
we certainly can have the hearing more open, and so that anyone can log in and they can be present and ask questions during the hearing versus having to send an email or make a phone call. I mean, we can operate it differently than we operate school board meetings.
We may just have turned Terry's hair whiter, giving it open mic. I come from a world of radio where there's always a delay for obvious reasons. So I think we need to find some way of controlling it. And I don't know. Terry, you have anything up your sleeve as far as a delay so that we can control content?
I've never looked into the delay. I think we can certainly have it so that we can cut someone off if it becomes really inappropriate. But I think a little research will go a long way here before we get going.
Tony?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I would support having the virtual, and I appreciate Colin's thought who's being left out. I think it's a really good idea. I think Pat's point that we easily could reach capacity, and then we're turning people away. And so how do we provide equity for them? Do we have video, a video stream as well? And if we're going to do both for this part of the quarantine, this part of COVID, I would say let's go ahead and just stick to the virtual, which has worked. I do think that virtual has worked to provide more attendance at our board meetings. And so I kind of look at it, hey, we're getting to more people that might not have been present or might have been left out. But I think Cullen's point of like people who either don't have internet access or aren't familiar enough or comfortable enough to have a dialogue, a virtual dialogue, is well put. And then just as far as the mic goes, you know, we've done the, you know, the hearings in the past with the mic, and that's, I mean, people do what they do with it. I think, yeah, just Terry doing a little research and having a, you know, a fast off finger might be a good backup plan for sure. But I would overall support staying with virtual this year and then figuring out what we do next year, if it's a hybrid access, but primarily in person, hopefully, and then but maintain the hybrid piece. Thank you.
And I think historically, people have been incredibly respectful when they've attended the meetings, and I would expect no less using the virtual process. So.
I would agree. We've never had an issue in the past. All right then.
Cullen has his hand raised again.
Oh,
Sorry,
Cullen.
just one last thought there. It might serve everybody if we go ahead with a virtual meeting, but in advance, give people an avenue to at least officially tell us that they cannot attend a virtual event, so we have a sense of how many folks we might be leaving out. And I don't know if that's an email address, a phone number. They can drop a note at the superintendent's office. I mean, you tell us, but if there's 2 people out of the entire district that can't swing a virtual event, then that tells us something. If it's 50 or 100, then maybe we should think twice about the way we present it.
And we have a brochure that will be distributed to all taxpayers, and there is contact information that will be made available. But Becky, you may have already written your letter as finance chair, but if not, maybe that's something that you include, is for anyone who has questions or concerns. This is where you should call, or this is who you should email to have those questions answered.
That can certainly be added.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then are we in agreement that we will research and move forward with a virtual hearing?
Yes. I think so.
Okay. Okay, great. We'll do that. Then, Becky, that's all we have for tonight. We do have the need for another meeting, of course, because we love our finance committee meetings. And at that time, we need to discuss food service. We need to discuss adult ed and that proposed budget. And as we discussed earlier, we will have Andrea come back to the finance committee with her 20-year history of the budget so that you can see where we've been in the past, and with an estimate of how much this budget will impact individual taxpayers. So I'm wondering if we want this budget, we'll need to have it approved by the board at the regular board meeting on May 6th. If that's the case, we need to make sure Andrea has plenty of time in advance to prepare all the documents that board members are going to have to approve, and they're going to have to come in and sign. There'll be a very short turnaround period. So my thought is that we have another meeting on Tuesday, April 27th. Does that work for folks? And I'm not sure that administrators need to be present other than Josh. Josh will have to be there. And I'm not sure, maybe Linda, to discuss food service.
Got it.
And then Becky, you and I, actually Becky and Tony, we had talked about Tuesday night as a second night. Maybe I would do that on Wednesday instead. Could you make that work? Monday and Wednesday Wednesday for those interviews?
Yes.
Okay,
But that, yeah, that would work better.
okay. And then those would be in person on Monday, Wednesday,
Mhm.
and this would be virtual. Okay, yeah, it's a long week. There'll be a lot, we'll be out a lot that week, but
Any of the weeks seem long right now.
yeah, but it needs to be done.
Has to be done.
Cullen, did you have another question, Cullen? Okay, all right. And Terry, you have your hand up as well. Do you have a question that we haven't answered? Okay. All
I
right.
think,
No, I do not have a question.
I think Terry's hand's been up the whole meeting. She was just seeing if we recognized it. And we didn't until an hour later. So, all right. Anyone else have anything?
I just want to make note that the information regarding the increase to taxpayers, that is dependent upon me receiving the information that I requested from each of the 4 communities. So if there's one community that I don't have it from, then I can't do it for any of the communities. So I just want you to be aware that I've requested the information and that I'm waiting for it.
Okay.
Okay?
Good to know.
Mhm.
All right then. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for your hard
Great.
work, administrators, Pat, Andrea.
Great.
All this hard work and the hours spent. So be well, everyone, and
Right.
see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.